Welcome to Association Voices, Dubai Association Centre's new podcast series, where we will explore the art of storytelling and how it impacts us across our professions. I'm your host, Layla Derraz, and today we are delving into a topic that has become transformational for businesses and associations alike. Today we're going to explore why storytelling is such a game changer for associations and how it influences marketing, leadership, and customer engagement. And most importantly, how we can use storytelling to take your association to the next level. Before we begin, I'm thrilled to be joined today by Alasdair Hall-Jones, Global Director from the Marketing Society, a member of the Dubai Association Centre. Welcome to the show, Alasdair. And please give our audience a little bit of background about yourself and your association.
Brilliant. Thank you, Layla. Really appreciate the invite to be part of this. So just a bit of background about me. I work for the Marketing Society. We're a not-for-profit membership organisation for senior marketers, headquartered in the UK, but we have hubs around the world in Hong Kong, Singapore, New York, Scotland, here in the UAE, and plans across the region as well. And our role is to bring the senior marketing leaders together from brands, medias, and agency to try and help advance the marketing communications industry by curating a community of the smartest, the brightest marketers out there to work together to try and drive change.
Thank you very much, Alasdair. Amazing background and an amazing topic for today's podcast, because I think every single person can relate to storytelling, whether it's stories we hear from our parents, from our friends, from even our different cultures. So we definitely have the right guest with us today to help us unwrap today's topic. So tell us, my first question to you, Alasdair, why does storytelling matter? And explain its significance and what it means in the workplace today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try and give you the answers both through a sort of marketing lens and through an association lens as well. I mean, ultimately, storytelling matters because it builds emotion. You know, stories are part of the fabric of our lives and have been for thousands of years. And they're ultimately there to build emotion, whether that's, positive emotion or sadness or empathy or whatever it might be. And in today's world, and especially where customers and consumers receive so many pieces of information from brands and businesses and government and so on, it's very, very hard to cut through all of that noise. And that's where storytelling does really help to make a difference, because it's not just about the rational part of your brain that is absorbing all of this information, but it's actually about the feelings of you and how this piece of information, this piece of storytelling, this piece of advertising, whatever it might be, makes you feel. Because ultimately, those feelings are stored in a part of the brain that is a lot more powerful. It's why we have stronger memories about bigger moments in our life when they are more emotional, whether that's good or bad. And so over the last probably 10 to 15 years, organizations and brands have been really trying to tap into the sort of the system one part of our brain, the subconscious, to really try and build emotion through either advertising or storytelling in different ways. And that's why it's really important. We have to be able to cut through the noise in the world that we live in today, and storytelling is one of the best ways to do that.
Thank you very much for that, Alasdair. And as you were speaking, obviously I've got other questions to come, but one thing immediately comes to mind, which is two T's in my mind: technology and truth. And like you said, with this over provision of information that we're getting, and what do you believe, what you don't believe, and what is real and what is not real. But as I said, we'll come on to that. But it's like I said, a fantastic time to be talking about storytelling right now, which brings me on to my second question. How have you seen storytelling and the concept of engagement as a whole within your industry change over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, technology's obviously played a huge part of that. The industry's gone through a big change. If you take the industry back in the 50s, 60s and 70s, advertising was predominantly on a few pieces of media. TV was obviously big. Radio was probably one of the biggest, billboards to a certain extent, and things like newspaper or print. So there were very, very few channels of media where you could actually advertise. But also then you had more room. Advertising on TV was 60-second commercials. Had more opportunity in sort of print because there was less advertising. And over the last, let's say 10, 15 years, especially with social media channels have changed, where you have to grab the attention of people very, very quickly. If you think about Twitter and Snap or X and Snap and Meta and Instagram, you really have to catch people's attention in seconds now, where it used to be a lot longer. And as such, storytelling has had to evolve to be able to tell stories in a shorter space of time. And then also to be able to tell stories over different pieces of channels and different media, which is actually a lot more difficult. It's a lot more fragmented. Um, and as such now, brands really have to try and build a strong emotional story in a short space of time, which is also why things like communities are really important, because what people have so much choice now. It's about how do they really tap into a community, and how do you tell that story through the community. So technology has been a big driver of that, but also the ability to create the communities and to create stronger engagement with brands and small communities has played a part of that too.
Thank you very much. This is a question on the side, but is it still storytelling then? What I mean to say specifically is when the attention span has gone from 60 seconds to sometimes 20 seconds, and if the message hasn't been delivered in that 20 seconds, someone's going to finger flick to the next ad or the next article and so on. Are we still keeping it as this is still storytelling, or is that even evolving into something else?
Yeah, this is where you need to be clever as a marketeer to be able to tell those stories across multiple channels, and at the same time, things like content marketing have been, have really come to the fore, where people have been created branded pieces of content, longer form videos where people can then tap into it. So what you'll find now is it's very, very much about grabbing attention and then taking that attention to something that you've created that will give you more details, that will give you more in depth. Um, if you think about people like Formula One, where they created Drive to Survive, that's a piece of sort of branded content where they've really then been able to capture that essence in longer form for people who are passionate as well. So it really comes down to the strength of the marketeers to be able to tell stories in a shorter space of time, but then to be able to build into that sort of marketing ecosystem around the piece of advertising to do it as well. It's not easy, and you see some brands that do it in a much better way. But it has changed, and I think it is more difficult now.
Absolutely. I mean, just like you said, that short attention span, in order for them to click through to something else, that 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 15 seconds that somebody has, you've got you and your people within your profession have to be absolute wizards to keep that attention, to then ask them or require the CTA to click through to further information. So it's definitely, is it fair to say that storytelling today is much, much harder than it was before? Or do you think it's the same?
I think so, probably in some ways, but also I think people are realizing how important it is. So there's more budget that goes towards it, and there's more focus. Storytelling's a kind of a buzzword in the marketing industry at the moment. But it's also about, the story doesn't always have to come from you. User generated content is something that, again, has really, picked up over the last few years. And if you can control kind of that narrative to help you build your stories as well, great marketeers are doing that. So yes, in some way, I think it has become a little bit more difficult just because attention is so challenging. But now, because people want to be involved, people really want to be engaged. It opens up more opportunities that, as I said, if you can craft the story well enough and you can control the narrative, that everything doesn't have to come from you. And again, that's an amazing, weapon in the arsenal that you wouldn't have had, 20, 30 years ago. So it really does differentiate from the brands that do it well and the brands that do it difficult, that don't.
Okie dokie. Already I'm just scribbling here because already I can see key things which have changed over the years or over the decades, such as storytelling means now to keep that attention being shorter, being succinct, being to the point, and engagement. You mentioned engagement. Are we talking the future of storytelling is not just opening up for people's opinions and views, but actually letting them be part of that narrative and that execution of the storytelling and engaging your audience to be part of that storytelling?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, people now want to be involved. They want to be players within ecosystems. And as I said, that's why I think communities have become such a strong element of businesses now. If you take a brand like, Gymshark, for example, a fantastic homegrown startup brand that has built a big part of what they do through really engaging people, in communities. People are incredibly passionate about what they do, whether it's the run clubs or so on. And as such, that helps to tell their story because they built it within a community. So I think this is where you kind of get some more super fans as well, who really are passionate about what you do. Well, it doesn't really matter what you're in. I use Gymshark as an example, but it could be other businesses as well. But people
Yeah.
want to be part of something. I think over the last 5 years as well, with COVID and people being locked away, maybe in some countries longer than other, this sort of desire to come together to be part of something where you all have shared common goals, I think is stronger than ever. And I think it will only continue to. And so why I think communities are really important that they play into storytelling is that if you can use them to your advantage, it's a great way to not only amplify the story, but as I mentioned earlier, to really control the narrative on it. So yeah, I think the power of communities, and especially with associations, obviously that's the core of what we do. And it's great as well that 2025 is the year of community in the UAE because of the importance and power of bringing people together to create big ideas and to create change. So yeah, more important, certainly, people want to be part of something more than they ever have before.
Fantastic. And that actually brings us back to our podcast today, which is for associations by associations. So for our community, for our ecosystem, why do you think this form of communication is a critical skill for modern leaders and marketing professionals alike? What advice can we give our associations?
Yeah, I think you've really got to think about the story of your, association. I mean, every association is actually quite different. It's one of the things that, when you come along to DAC events and you see in our community, just the breadth of different associations is quite big. But also associations, the challenge in many ways is that it's usually run by volunteers, or it's usually run by very, very small teams who may not naturally be marketers or might not naturally have that marketing skill set or mentality within their businesses. If I think about us as the marketing society, that as a business, we don't have loads of people that have come from marketing backgrounds. We've got people from associations and sales and so on. And so probably there's a bit of a lack of knowledge around actually how to build storytelling into your business. But really, one of the things that we do have is a really strong purpose. And, usually very, very strong missions, objectives, whatever the word that you have within it, which is a natural engager of people. We've now got an organization which is all about helping people do well and do good and feel good, which again really helps to build that storyline. We're really trying to, help our members do well, and we want to help them do good by having a bigger impact for their businesses, their clients, their partners, and so on. And the role of marketing as being a driving force for good in the business world, because we want to help grow people, planet, and profit. So, we build this storyline of who we are and what we're trying to do at a very, very, it's what I'm talking about all the time, because it's really important to draw that in because people are passionate about that. And especially when you get to a certain level, you find people very often, it's all about giving back. So people usually get to a level where they become a director or roughly around that. They get to a certain age and they think, it's my time to sort of give back. And that then plays into that storytelling narrative even more because you are part of this association. For us, as a member, they are technically an owner of the society. We have 3,300 members. They're technically an owner. And so the more we can build this narrative and this storyline that this is their society and we are here to kind of help shape steer the ship, but that this is your organization and we want to help you make a big difference within the profession of marketing. Sorry, suddenly that storyline becomes pretty strong and pretty, people are passionate to engage and give back and contribute. And I think one of the things that we have done, we've seen huge growth over the last 5 years. Our membership's grown 400% off the back of COVID. We now have 600 members here in the UAE. A big part of that has come through that storytelling of the community culture and really trying to get people to help and be inspired to do well, to do good and feel good. So for us, that's been a massive part of what we do, maybe a little bit more natural because we are marketers. But I think that, an association has something that many other businesses don't. And that is people really want to give back. I don't want to give back to my shampoo, but I want to give back to an association that can help,
Yeah.
shape the next generation of marketers.
You guys are obviously way ahead because of this amazing community ecosystem and ethos that you guys have built. But for associations, as you rightly mentioned, especially here in Dubai, a lot of these associations right now are run by volunteers, those that can't 100% commit, as for example, yourself and your colleagues within the marketing society. What advice would you give these associations here in Dubai to help them focus on a specific storytelling framework, which they can then implement?
Yeah, I think one of the key things I would do is don't focus so much on the sort of the rational benefits. When I talk about the marketing society, I rarely talk about how many events that we run or, all the benefits. The very first thing I share is all the things that I just mentioned, the do well, the do good, feel good. We're here to raise the quality. It's a not-for-profit organization. You technically own it. So I really build that storyline first. And I think, when I've seen other associations, it's how many members we've got, how many events we run, or how many subgroups we've got.
Yeah.
They're all really important, but that comes later. The emotion comes first. So number one, really start with, what is it that you're actually here to do? You're not there to run events. You are there to advance people's careers or bring people together or train people. Be really succinct in, the real proposition of your business. And they all have different words, but ultimately it's a purpose, it's a mission, and it's a vision if you use those three as basics. And I think sometimes with associations, as I said, it gets so, because you're doing a million jobs at once and you're juggling so many balls with volunteers and so on, you get straight into the detail. But I would suggest just take a step back and really think about why you exist as a business. What does your association do that no one else can? And then probably the third thing is to really work on the culture. As I said, it's a big part of my job. Really trying to get people to realize that they can have an active role in this society. And I mentioned subgroups or working groups or committees all have different names as part of it. But that's how you build communities. It's not, you build communities through sub communities. So, it's who are the 10 people that can help there? Who are the 12 people that can help there? And that then builds into that community ethos as well. And then you'll get more people who want to be spokesperson for you or give testimonials or, even those word of mouth recommendations because they're really engaged. And the best thing I would do is to find where the people are passionate about and where you want focus as a business. Think of it as a Venn diagram. What is the purpose or so what's the passion of my members versus what is the business impact that we can have as an association? And if you can find that middle ground of the Venn diagram, that's where you'll have the biggest impact because people are passionate.
What have you seen in your journey with associations to have been common mistakes that associations make when trying to tell their story? And what advice would you give to them to avoid them?
I mean, for us as a business, we probably launched too many international markets at once. We had this big passion about taking the marketing society globally. And actually, if you've probably taken a step back, we probably could have launched 5 countries in 5 years. We could have probably done 2 or 3 and then had a bigger impact. So I think it's about being really focused on, what are your objectives and what's actually manageable. We talked about a lot. Associations, the biggest challenge normally is the resource to do things. It's either volunteer led or it's usually one very, very passionate person who's trying to really drive this charge. So I think be really, really focused in what you're doing. And that is aligned to your vision, purpose, mission, whatever those languages are. And then really focus on maybe a couple of areas that you can deliver on. As I said, what is it that you can do that kind of no one else can? So for the Marketing Society, we say there are 3 benefits that we try and deliver. The first is community. How do we help people tap into a community of 600 in the UAE, 3,500 globally? The second thing is inspiration. So through our events, our content, our awards, our publications, our working groups, we are here to provide you inspiration that you can't get anywhere else. And then the third thing is acceleration. So how do we help accelerate your careers and the careers of your team? And those 3 things we really, really focus and double down on. So everything is aligned to it. Our events program has to fall into one of those 3 buckets. Our training predominantly fits in the accelerate, so on. Our content, we want it to fit in those. So I think be very, very focused on what you want to do and what you can do that no one else can. And I think when I've seen pitfalls of others is when they try and do too much. And actually it's like, what are you really good at and what do your members really need? And then really double down on it. And as I said, for us, it's the CIA, community, inspiration, acceleration. So I think that's probably where When we haven't quite been at our best as a business, or when I've seen other associations, they're always trying to do a bit more, but it's like, are you doing a bit more in the right places? Or is it better to cut 50% of what you do and really double down on training, or really double down on online events, or whatever it is that you are good at and that your members need, and really focus on that.
Moving on to my next and final question for us today. All the advice that you've given so far is where you're giving advice and guidance to associations to understand what it is they want, what it is they're about, what is their mission, as you said, their focus. That's a human-centric identification of purpose. And now we've got AI, that's come in. And is there a worry, or do you see a worry, or how do you see storytelling evolving in the future with AI? But at the same time, the advice that you've given, which is to advise associations, as I said, to find their focus, find their reason, but not you, and that must come from them, but not use AI to answer that and then totally take them another rabbit hole. So
Yeah.
how do we as associations navigate and control and understand or use AI to help us as opposed to lead us with regards to storytelling?
Yeah. I mean, AI and especially, generative AI is a huge boost. I mean, for the whole world, but especially associations, because it allows you to create vast amounts of content that you never would have been able to because of having small teams. So it actually probably impacts smaller businesses in a way, in a better way, because you're able to create things that you never would have. And especially when it comes to storytelling and visuals and videos and content, the progression of some of these platforms now is just absolutely incredible. We're seeing full adverts created in full AI. Now, I'm not saying associations are going to be there yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if in 3 to 5 years, with a subscription of a couple of, $12, $15 a month, you could get there. The key then is to really make sure that what you're creating is really aligned, as I said, that proposition. And the ones that aren't will just go off to create lots and lots and lots and lots. But is it the right lots? And I think that's where you've got to be really focused and really sort of bringing in simplicity quite a lot in this, going back to it, going back to that proposition. So AI is a massive tool for the world, but storytelling as well, because it allows you to create. But that's where you're going to need to be really good at prompting, and you're going to be really good to be able to provide the right prompts aligned to your brand, to align to your proposition, and to align to the sort of the community culture that you're trying to create. So I think AI provides a huge amount of opportunity for associations around storytelling. But you're going to need people who are going to upskill themselves, which is challenging, and to make sure that it is on brand and on proposition and really aligned to what you want to create.
Fantastic. I mean, we could honestly go on for a lot more hours, but I'm sure we'll be shut down at some point. Alasdair, that's a wrap for our discussions today. I want to say a huge thank you on behalf of the Dubai Association Centre for sharing such valuable insights on the power of storytelling. And we actually have a members roundtable discussion in June. I believe we've reached out to our members regarding this event, where we're going to be, diving deeper into storytelling and the tools needed to help us really make the most of it to better ourselves and the future of our associations, to serve our members better. It's clear that the importance of storytelling is really going to help us members connect with our association, connect with our members and drive our success and our members' respective success. To all of those listening today, we really do hope you found this session valuable. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. Also, we would love to hear from you. If you have any feedback or comments, please get in touch. And finally, we welcome you all to share these interviews with your friends and peers who might also benefit from the topics that shape our association ecosystem today. Until next time, take care, stay connected. And Alasdair, thank you once again for joining us today. Thank you. Goodbye.